Welcome to the first transfer tips video and podcast of the new season. Looking ahead to Game Week 2, and I have to kind of timestamp this. It is recorded before the Leicester City versus Spurs game, and of course that could also bring some new findings and players who might be buys, holds, sells and skips, and that's what I'll be doing in this video and podcast, highlighting 11 players to fit in each of those categories as usual. If you want to see any changes to this system, or perhaps you want to discuss other players, let me know down in the comment section below. On screen you can see Draft Town, which is a great resource, and I've currently got the fixture analysis tool, and I've currently set it by the chance of scoring over 2+ goals in Game Week 2, and undoubtedly Man City are top with a massive gap to Liverpool in second place. But to be fair, those two are also well ahead of the rest of the pack, with Tottenham in third, Chelsea in fourth and Arsenal in fifth, despite having a very tough game on paper against Aston Villa away. More content is headed your way too, such as the team selection, best wildcard team, and if you want to see a predicted lineups video and podcast for Game Week 2, let me know as well in the comments, and smash the like button of this video, getting it to over 200 likes, and let's keep on pushing towards new goals like 35 subscribers. I believe after this video is published we will reach 26,000, so thank you very much for all your support. We're literally just a few away from that milestone, and let's keep on pushing towards new goals across all social media platforms. The links to my Twitter, Instagram, Discord server, the FPL League and Draft Town are all in the description below. Without further ado, let's jump straight into it. The first buy of the new campaign is Diogo Jota, who I currently have in my setup. He costs 7.5 million right now, but expect this price to go up by the Game Week 2 deadline, possibly to 7.6 million. His ownership is currently 17.2% at the time of this recording. He scored a goal after missing that open chance, that header that he glanced just wide against Ipswich Town. He had two big chances in that game, but luckily did take one of them. 8 FPL points is a solid return. No bonus, but he got the clean sheet point, the goal, and of course, as a midfielder, it's very enticing to have a Diogo Jota who is playing out of position up front for Liverpool at this moment in time. The next 4 fixtures are fantastic. Liverpool are top of the fixture difficulty rating from Game Weeks 1 to 8 overall, but of course, we're all focused now from Game Week 2 onwards, with Game Week 1 almost out of the way after Leicester City versus Tottenham Hotspur. But I think Diogo Jota is a great way of covering Salah. He's not ideal, and I still think Salah will score several more points than all Liverpool attackers and players, including Trent Alexander-Arnold, but having a combination of a Jota and Trent for the combined price of a Salah essentially is still well worth it in my opinion, and that's why Diogo Jota is the first buy of the new season. In the rating your team's video, I was quite hesitant about Gvardiol, at least for Game Week 1. I thought Chelsea would score in that game, but Man City kept the clean sheet in that 2-0 win. It was pretty much a statement victory for the citizens, who are looking to win a 5th consecutive Premier League title, and Gvardiol was crucial in the last part of the season to really push Man City on to win the previous title. Now the next 3 fixtures are fantastic, but then it's Arsenal at home in Game Week 5 and Newcastle away in Game Week 6, but afterwards you've also got good fixtures until Game Week 11, so you've pretty much got 2 or 3 difficult games for Man City for the next 10 game weeks, and that's why Gvardiol is definitely worth including. He is a template pick with over 32% ownership, and he does cost 6 million. He's the only Man City defender I'd thoroughly recommend, but if you wanted to go for a cheaper option who could start most games, Akanji would be the next best option for the citizens. Now Gvardiol obviously didn't get any goals or assists, but he took 1 shot, kept the clean sheet and 6 FPL points overall. He was so close to getting a bonus point, but Edison just pipped him in the bonus point system by just 1. I think Edison had 30 in the BPS and Gvardiol had 29. So we're talking about very fine margins here, and Gvardiol will get plenty of bonus points, a few attacking returns and clean sheets this season. It's always good when a differential returns for you, and Chris Wood did that for me in Game Week 1. His ownership is just under 6% now, but when I bought him, it was around 4%. He scored that goal against Bournemouth, the opener, and he got 3 bonus points for that effort, despite Semenyo's late equaliser. And Chris Wood had 1 big chance, 9 FPL points, a very solid return for a 6 million forward. So if you are looking for that budget striker as your third option, I think Chris Wood is one of the better ones. You could make a case that Manise is better because of the superior fixtures, but I still like Nottingham Forest's fixtures long term. There is Liverpool away in Game Week 4. I'd recommend benching Chris Wood, and if you sold him, I wouldn't really blame you, but I think Chris Wood would be benchable there, and you start him against Southampton, Wolves, Brighton, and in the preceding fixtures afterwards. So if you are looking for a 6 million striker or under, I think Chris Wood, Welbeck and Manice would be my top 3 right now. Don't discount Joao Pedro just yet. I still think he's a decent option, but I would argue that Chris Wood is the best of the lot for Game Week 2. In just 9 appearances against Brighton in the Premier League, Bruno Fernandes has 4 goals and 2 assists, and that doesn't even include fantasy assists he may have gotten over the last couple of seasons. He didn't score or assist in Game Week 1 against Fulham in the Premier League opener. He missed 2 big chances and his XG was 1.03, one of the highest of any player of any club in Game Week 1, so only 3 FPL points was a big disappointment. Even Garnacho got higher despite coming off the bench very late on, Xerxes of course scoring the winner and getting maximum bonus points, but I still think Bruno Fernandes will be the highest scoring Man United player over the course of the season, but Garnacho may offer much better value for money because he costs 2 million less than the Portuguese maestro. Now Game Week 2 looks good against Brighton away. I would recommend holding Bruno Fernandes and starting him there, but Liverpool at home looks very tough. Fernandes scored in that fixture last season just a couple of months ago, but it's still a very difficult one on paper. Southampton away is a brilliant fixture for Manchester United, and Crystal Palace away, that's not the easiest of games, and they have caused the Red Devils problems over the last couple of years. But Bruno Fernandes is a hold. Is he my favourite midfielder at 8.5 million to maybe 10 million? Not necessarily, but for Game Week 2, I'd actually rather start him than the likes of Bukayo Saka against Aston Villa. Anthony Gordon is the 7th most transferred up player at the time of this recording, with 56,000 managers taking the plunge and going in a different direction, but it's difficult to judge all Newcastle assets based on that one performance against Southampton after Newcastle went down to 10 men very early on in that game. Fabian Schär is now suspended for 3 matches, but I still believe Anthony Gordon is a good asset until Game Week 6 when Newcastle face Manchester City at home, and considering Gordon's home record over the last year, I still wouldn't really mind him against the biggest clubs in a home match, but in Game Week 1 he produced a blank at St James's Park. Last season only 2 throughout the entire season, which is absolutely ridiculous. I said in my preseason predictions that I didn't believe Anthony Gordon would really match that and he'd blank more often in home matches, but you can't judge that Southampton performance too much where Anthony Gordon only got 1 key pass. His XGI was 0.02. He never looked like scoring or assisting, but I still think he's a nice partner for Isak in your FPL teams, but maybe not in the long term. So I'd say he's a short to medium term hold. He's still worth 7.5 million. His ownership has gone down quite significantly. I think it was around 36% just 1 or 2 weeks ago. Only 3 FPL points in Game Week 1, but I could see him doing very well in the next 4 game weeks in particular, with 1 double-digit haul and perhaps another return in a home match. This may be a controversial one, but I believe Quansah is a hold until the press conference just before the Game Week 2 deadline at least. If Arne Slot builds upon what he talked about in his post-match interview about the importance of winning duels, particularly against Brentford, then you would expect Quansah to drop to the bench with Konate and Virgil van Dijk as the centre-back partnership for Game Week 2 at least. But over the course of the season, I still maintain what I said. I believe Quansah will start at least 20 plus league games, but of course that half-time substitution against Ipswich Town is very frustrating for those that went there, as Liverpool kept a clean sheet, but Quansah only delivered 1 point after being subbed off at half-time. But I still believe Quansah can be a good FPL asset, start plenty of games. He also scored twice last season in 13 starts, which is very impressive for a centre-back. Liverpool have fantastic fixtures as well, so at least wait until the press conferences and give Quansah at least 1 more shot in Game Week 2. It's very rare for goalkeepers to be discussed in transfer tips videos and podcasts because when we look at top 5 most transferred in or transferred out in a particular game week, goalkeepers aren't really in that discussion. The ideal scenario is to pick 1 goalkeeper and he'll be your set and forget until you make a wild card or maybe until the end of the season. But Jordan Pickford is the 5th most transferred out player at the moment and his ownership is 16% now. He was the 2nd highest owned behind David Raya, but that's changing now over the last couple of weeks. He conceded 10 shots to Brighton Brighton, which isn't that much to be fair. I think Brighton were fairly clinical in that game. Everton had a promising start. The red card didn't help at 2-0 down, but I have to say Brighton were just really methodical in their wing play and they cut Everton open at will. But 2 saves for Pickford, which isn't really great because in the end he produced 1 FPL point after conceding 3 goals to the Seagulls. The XGC, the expected goals conceded figure, was 1.56, but people will then point towards the departure of Onana and also the injury to Branthwaite as the 2 main reasons for Everton's really poor and underwhelming performance, at least in terms of the scoreline. But let's also put things into context. Everton started last season terribly and it took them a while to get going. Then the likes of Pickford produced a lot of clean sheets, made a lot of saves, and he ended up being the highest scoring goalkeeper in FPL last season. Now Tottenham and Aston Villa away in the next 3 look terrible, but until Game Week 14 in December, Everton have the best fixture run of any Premier League club. So I still think Pickford is a hold. At least give him 5 or 6 more game weeks. You really don't want to make transfers with your goalkeeper. It may surprise you to hear that Barco isn't in the top 10 most transferred up players, but that could definitely change over the next couple of days. But let's put things into context. He's a 4 million defender and he could still start in Game Week 2 or Game Week 4, I reckon, but Stupinian is on the verge of returning. James Milner played in Barco's position in Game Week 1, which just isn't ideal whatsoever, and there are constant links with several left-backs across Europe, so Barco isn't a safe pick. I firmly believed he would start in Game Week 1. He got a lot of game time in pre-season, but sometimes you get things wrong, and Barco was one of them. His ownership is 23.8%. When I first started recommending him and making graphics for him, his ownership was actually around 5%, but he became such a popular choice based on his preseason performances, and sometimes life throws you curveballs, and the same goes for FPL and the Premier League. The new manager Ursula did a great job in his opener in the Premier League, that 3-0 win over Brighton. You can't really discredit him. He made a decision to bench Barco. It worked, but ultimately those that went there and relied on Barco to start in Game Week 1 were the ones who felt it the most. I had Barco second on my bench, so I don't mind it too much. The biggest concern with him though is they will possibly drop to 3.9 million in price, but that all depends on the transfer activity. So the ideal scenario is probably to just hold Barco, give him another chance in Game Week 2 and see what happens. But my advice is, if you have 0.5 million in the bank and you can make that upgrade, Barco to a 4.5 million defender like Robinson or Joachim Andersen is still a very viable alternative, and I don't recommend having 2 4 million defenders in your setup. So if you have Harwood Bellis and Valentin Barco, my advice is to sell the Argentine to a 4.5 million defender. Ivan Toney is on the chopping block for many FPL managers. His ownership has gone down to 9%. And 76,000 players have sold Ivan Toney, and with good reason. He wasn't in the squad in that 2-1 win over Crystal Palace in the opening game of the season. Ivan Toney obviously played no minutes whatsoever as a result, and the next 4 fixtures for all Brentford assets look terrible, and I don't see Ivan Toney staying at the club. He's always linked with moves away, and this could be the summer where he's finally offloaded, and several Premier League clubs are interested, but also throughout Europe there will be some clubs that are looking at Ivan Toney to become their starting striker. Now, it was Wissa, Schade and Mbumo as the front 3, and Brentford was one of the teams I got spot on in my predicted lineups video and podcast, and Ivan Toney is a good FPL asset over the last couple of years, but I don't see him staying at Brentford. Even if he does, I don't see him starting against Liverpool away, Southampton at home, which is a great fixture on paper, and then it's Man City away and Tottenham away. These are terrible fixtures. I think Tottenham is good for the attackers like Mbumo, but honestly, with all Brentford assets, you probably just avoid all of them for now. Southampton at home, if you can do a 1 game week punt and then wildcard in Game Week 4, then absolutely fair enough. But Ivan Toney is a very simple sell due to his situation, and I just don't see him starting any games for Brentford. Over 180,000 managers have transferred in Mazraoui after his great debut and performance against Fulham. An 8-pointer. He actually got maximum bonus points originally, but they can amend these bonus points until the end of the Game Week 1 deadline. That's a new rule in FPL. So he did go down from 3 bonus points to 2, and Xerxes ended up claiming all maximum bonus. But I still think the Moroccan right-back can offer great value. I just wouldn't buy him in Game Week 2. I personally think Man United will concede against Brighton and Liverpool. If you want to invest in Man United defenders like Lisandro Martinez, Mazraoui, Dalot and perhaps De Ligt, I'd recommend Game Week 4 when they face Southampton away, and the fixtures afterwards are fairly decent. But despite Brighton being classed as favourable in the FDR, the fixture difficulty rating on the FPL website, I don't think it's a great fixture. Brighton will likely score in that game, and I wouldn't go for Mazraoui. I don't buy the hype for Game Week 2 specifically. His ownership is less than 5%, but it surely will exceed that by the Game Week 2 deadline. He got no goals or assists, but 2 bonus points and 8 FPL points overall makes him a decent differential to consider in the long term. But don't buy Mazraoui with Game Weeks 2 and 3 in mind. The 11th and final player covered today is Nkunku, and he is a skip. I was looking at him as a buy just before that Man City versus Chelsea game, and you can't judge too much on that because they're facing the best team in the country for the last couple of years. But I have to say, Nkunku being subbed off before 60 minutes is a major put-off, and I'm not saying Nkunku is a skip forever, or at least even for the next 3 or 4 game weeks. What I would recommend is not buying him in Game Week 2, because Wolves away could be a tough game for Chelsea, and you want to see if Nkunku gets good minutes in that particular match. So my advice with Nkunku is probably to buy him from Game Week 3 and beyond, despite Crystal Palace being a tough opponent as well. But I have to say, Wolves isn't the easiest of games. That could be a banana skin for Chelsea, and Nkunku's minutes could be a concern. He got 1 shot inside the box against Man City, 1 FPL point, and of course no returns whatsoever. His ownership is still quite high at 16.5%, and he can offer great value this season at 6.5 million, but I wouldn't go for Nkunku just yet. Cole Palmer remains the best Chelsea asset. I'd put the Frenchman in second, but I think he's a buy for Game Week 3 or 4 if he gets good minutes against Wolves. That concludes the first Transfers video and podcast of the season with 11 players to buy, hold, sell and skip. And on YouTube, you can see on screen the most transferred out players this game week. Ollie Watkins is the most, with over 100,000 managers transferring him out. And we've also got Rodri, who is injured at the moment. There's no guarantee he returns for Game Week 2. And even if he's available, they might ease him back in so he's ready for big clashes like Arsenal at home in Game Week 5. Ivan Toney's third, as mentioned before. Trippier fourth, Pickford fifth. Anthony Gordon in 7th, also covered today. And we've got other players like Phil Foden. I would not recommend that. I could see him starting in Game Week 2, especially with Savio picking up a knock, and of course Oscar Bob injured for the next few months. Thank you very much for watching this video and listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for new. Our aim is to get this video to the 200 likes, and let's keep on pushing towards 35 subscribers and beyond. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the other links in the description below for my Patreon and the championships for early access to my videos, amongst many other perks. The Discord server, the FPL League, Draft Town, all the links are there as well. And my Spotify. Leave a 5-star review on my podcast. It goes a long way to supporting my channel. I wish you all the best of luck for Game Week 2 and the rest of the season. And I'll see you next time.